All right, YouTube, it's always very funny when a major political party invents a conspiracy theory in order to explain its own negligence, its own stupidity, its own corruption. But that's exactly what the Democratic Party is currently doing. The Clinton camp has responded to the DNC leaks and is blaming Russians specifically, blaming, I guess, in a roundabout way, some imagined relationship between Trump and Putin, which they hope, I mean, they don't address actually the content of the DNC leaks. They don't address the fact that the DNC colluded with certain Clinton staffers in order to deny Sanders the election. They don't talk about the fact that the DNC openly attempted to make light of the fact that Sanders was atheistic in the Deep South, kind of going against the whole church and state argument that Democrats usually tried to trot out. And it shows overall the DNC is just a corporate machine. It's run by banks, corporations, and billionaires and multimillionaires at the behest of the party insiders and those same donors. It has nothing to do with democracy. That's really the sum and substance of what the DNC leaks show. Now, I already knew that. I also know that the RNC operates similarly, but for the first time we have actual documentation of this fact. Now, Clinton's staff and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all these others, they don't deny that these are real emails. They don't deny the veracity of the content. And if you read some of these emails, they look like they were made by a bunch of fucking middle schoolers, which shows the average grade of intelligence within the DNC as well as most of Hillary's staff. It's almost unreadable at points. The number of spelling errors, the infantile language, constant swearing, I think may take some people aback, not me, but again, some mainstream individuals. Essentially, they're hoping that Hillary Clinton's hardened supporters will thus blame the Russians and think Trump's involved with an international conspiracy, as opposed to actually reading some of these emails and realizing, oh, well, regardless of where the leak came from, and it probably could have been a Russian hacker for all we know, regardless of where the leak originates, they are real emails. The DNC is culpable. They are completely corrupt from top to bottom. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is resigning for a reason. She will not be presiding over the DNC. Now, the fact that it happened right before the Democratic convention is not evidence of a conspiracy theory. What it's evidence of is that Julian Assange WikiLeaks that attempt to keep politicians accountable, and they do this to Republicans too. They do this to leaders around the world. They did it to the Russians, so I'm not sure what they're fucking talking about. Decided, yeah, this is probably an opportune time to release this. We'll release it right before the convention to cause maximum pain and suffering to the Democratic Party. But they deserve it. Read the goddamn emails. They show a direct corruption on so many multiple levels. It's almost astonishing to think the degree to which they're corrupt. I think a lot of people, even more pessimistic individuals, didn't expect that it was that prevalent. You have social security numbers improperly recorded. You have credit card information improperly recorded. You have collusion between apparently certain funding groups and the DNC at large. You have several people appear to have replied to chain emails from the DNC with essentially, fuck you, Hillary's corrupt, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is corrupt, and I used to be a Democrat, and now I'm not, showing, I guess, certain donors that were reached by these emails from these lists didn't take too kindly to what the DNC was doing. And it shows massive disarray and the ultimate level of corruption you could possibly envision going on right now. And I think that Hillary Clinton, whose campaign was already on the ropes, I explained this in my last video, her campaign was already faltering. Despite massively outraising the Republicans, it doesn't seem to have made that big a difference, if any difference at all, and in fact may have been a net negative for them because they're a corporate fundraising machine. They're hemorrhaging the youth vote, they're hemorrhaging the business Democrats, they're hemorrhaging independent voters. Everybody is fleeing like rats off a sinking ship, including some actual Democratic insiders that don't want to get caught in the crossfire. You've got Michael Bloomberg trying to salvage the situation, but the DNC is probably going to devolve into chaos outside, and it's probably going to be boring as hell on the inside. People are probably going to end up watching more of the protests than the actual DNC itself. If you think that the RNC's ratings were bad, which admittedly they were lower because TV's dying, The DNC will combine that with the fact that everyone's too busy watching live streams of people beating on each other outside the convention center, and it'll be just a free-for-all, I think. I predicted that the Republican convention would have limited problems. I'm predicting that the DNC has far worse problems. It's not going to be complete anarchy, but it's going to be more prevalent. It's going to be more noticeable at the DNC. There probably will be some violence going on outside where there was basically none at the RNC. But it's always funny because being liberal and salon in these pages, for years now, every time somebody attempts to say Hillary did something wrong, Obama did something wrong, Kerry did something wrong, whatever, they would label it a conspiracy theory. Now they are happily indulging themselves in blaming a Russian plot for WikiLeaks' actions right before their convention. But it's not ultimately going to matter. People are going to see right through this. In fact, the fact that they don't address the issue itself, which is, yeah, the DNC is filled with corruption, beyond saying, okay, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to have to resign and she won't be the one presiding over the opening ceremony of the DNC. The fact that they're not willing to address it beyond that makes them look very callous. It also makes it look like they simply don't want to talk about what's going on. I can't blame them. I wouldn't want to talk about it either. If 19,000 corrupt emails were leaked from some organization, some corporation, which is what the DNC is, that I was presiding over, I probably would just be hiding under the bed at that point. I'd be, I'd be sauced, or I'd be hiding under the bed, preparing to move to Aruba or something like that at that point. It shows the corporate machine that is representative of Hillary Clinton. Now, here's the thing. Clinton herself is not directly responsible for these emails. Some of her staffers are involved, but they're lower-level individuals or advisory position individuals. Mostly what we're seeing are people in the DNC being corrupt. That being said, it begs two questions. First, could Hillary have won without such massive support from inside the DNC that's supposed to not be doing this? That's number one. Number two, was she aware of what her staffers and these others were doing in coordination with the DNC? Now, all signs point to yes. You're probably not going to see actual evidence of that. But yeah, all signs point to yes, and people's perception of that being likely is going to hurt her way more than the leak itself. It's just another, even if Hillary is not directly involved with the leak, she is the nominee of the party and the nominee backed by the DNC, who the DNC being involved with the convention and so forth. All anybody is going to hear for the next couple of days is about these leaks. Whenever the DNC is mentioned, people ask, oh, what about the impact of the leaks? What about the impact of them questioning Sanders' faith or whatever? And Bernie Sanders, of course, called for Schultz to step down. He still says he's with Hillary, which just shows him to be even more of a cock. Let's face it, it shows him to be even more of a sellout. I don't even think many of his fans at this point, the hardened fans, are going to listen to him. I don't think they're going to jump aboard the Clinton campaign at all. Clinton is untrustworthy. She's a centrist. Her VP was almost a slap in the face to these same progressives and socialists, and then you have the DNC leaks on top of that. Now, if thousands or tens of thousands of people were going to show up before, and it was likely that there were going to be a lot of protesters outside, it is now certain that there are going to be a lot of protesters outside, and their numbers are probably going to swell well beyond the estimates that they've said something about 15 to 25,000 or something. That's a hell of a lot more than we're at the RNC. At the RNC, it was a couple thousand at its peak. Petered off to a few hundred people, who then ended up fighting amongst themselves over why nobody had showed up. I do not think that's going to be the case with the DNC, and what this is going to do, the ultimate effect that all of these little things are going to have, is that their convention is largely useless, unlike the Republican convention. It's going to be useless because it's going to make the party look like the actual party of disunification. That's going to hang like a pall over the next months of campaigning until the first debate, at which point I think Trump will smash her out of it into oblivion. Let's face it. And even if he doesn't at this point, it may not even matter. He could have an off debate or two, and at this point, I'm not sure that even that would save her campaign. That's how bad the situation has become. This shows a level of corruption and ineptitude of historical levels within a major party. It's not the Republicans that are being inept. The RNC was, some people didn't like it, but most of them were Hillary fans or burnouts or something. The Republicans aren't going to like the DNC. What it comes down to is, are independents going to tune in? Are their minds going to change? Will the party look better after the convention than before? I think it would be difficult for it to look worse, but I don't see that improving. That's the point. Because of all these lingering questions hanging over the convention, it's not clear that anything Hillary or Tim Kaine or Bloomberg or any of these other sort of heavy hitters can say. It's not sure that anything that they say is actually going to change anybody's mind. In fact, the prevalence of centrists within the DNC itself, who will be speaking at the convention, might even turn off more Bernie Sanders supporters. All it takes is one verbal slip-up saying something bad about Sanders or anything like that, or being dismissive, and those people outside will be even more angry. They'll be even more potentially violent. And I will remind you, throughout this campaign, the vast majority of all of the violence that we have seen at political events, rallies, speeches, whatever it happens to be, the vast majority of the violence that has occurred with two groups, Black Lives Matter and Bernie Sanders supporters, often cannibalizing one another. Often they're not even like fighting some right-wing biker dude. They devolve into fighting one another. You get 25,000 of them outside of the convention center. They're already pissed off, massed in large numbers. The police are around. They tend not to be, let's face it, friendly towards the police. And it's a recipe for mayhem. I don't think it'll be street-to-street looting and burning, but I think that there will be a conspicuously much larger number of them there. They will be conspicuously less in line than at the RNC, where there were, thousands of people with assault rifles walking around open carrying, in addition to, 10,000 police from around the country. It got to the point at the RNC in the last couple of days, the police vastly outnumbered the protesters. I don't think that's going to be the case in Philadelphia. I think the DNC is going to have some fucking issues. Mostly, I don't think that many people will even tune in. I don't think that they'll care. You look at the internet, what are people going to be looking for? Oh man, there's going to be protests. Oh, there's going to be looting and shooting and violence. We got to set up live streams because this is going to be great. That's what they were going to do that at the RNC the first hours of the first night. That's what people were expecting. When it became clear that there were so few protesters there and things were so calm for the most part, people started fixating on Alex Jones trolling people, the speakers, the people actually making speeches, and any gaffes that they happened to make. But at least the attention was inside of the convention center. I don't know if that'll be the case for the Democratic convention. It seems to me that Hillary Clinton's camp's response to the DNC leaks couldn't have been worse. It's so dismissive and so out there to try to blame a Russian conspiracy. It's so out there that I have a feeling that people who thought that Clinton was sort of the common sense, centrist, safe candidate are going to begin to look into whether that's actually the case. Then they'll look at what Tim Kaine said over time and wonder if he's actually a Democrat at all, and I think that'll piss them off even further. I expect a continued mass exodus of business Democrats, sort of fiscally more conservative Democrats, and younger far-left Democrats out of the party. Not uniformly to Trump, but it doesn't really matter. They're still not going to be voting for Clinton. That's going to decline her popularity further. You look at the polling, it's not looking good for Clinton because, again, for the last time, hopefully, that I need to say this, Clinton is supposedly in opposition to the Antichrist himself, who wants to start World War III, is probably the spawn of Adolf Hitler, or at least is a Klan-loving bigot who hates gays, he hates women, he's misogynistic, sexist, he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just a serial liar who's had a string of bankruptcies and was handed several $1 billion on a silver platter. Supposedly this is her opponent, according to Hillary and Tim Kaine and Obama and these others. I don't think that argument's going to hold up to scrutiny over time. I think that she's used up most of her ammo, and that when the first debate comes, most people will end up rooting for Trump already before the debate even begins. And they'll be blind to anything that she happens to say because she's perceived of as a chronic liar. It's going to become a big problem. It's only going to get more prevalent. You may not see it now. I do. I was accurate throughout virtually the entire span of the primaries, other than Wisconsin, notably and admittedly. And while everybody else, even well after Super Tuesday, was saying Trump's a flash in the pan, he's peaked, low ceiling, never make it, they'll collude, they'll rig it, they'll team up and force him out. Did it happen? Well, I realized that long before Super Tuesday even occurred. I realized it by South Carolina, long before a single pundit or a single analyst took it seriously. So I'm going to trust my gut instinct here. I don't think it'll be Clinton being your next president, which is probably a good thing. Trump has difficulties in some areas. I don't agree with him on many things, but he's better than Clinton. I like Gary Johnson, but he is better than Clinton. And I think the country would continue to go to shit under Clinton. It would basically just be a less honest third term Obama. Things would continue to decline into irrelevance until we're, no longer a superpower per se. Whereas Trump, I think there's at least a chance that his policies in general would be good and that we'd hit a boom time. I think there's a chance of it. There's no chance of it with Hillary. But even if it's a small chance, yeah, Trump could potentially do that. And I do think, by the way, some of his proposals are a good idea. Lessening the tax burden on entrepreneurs. For me, trust me, his tax plan would be fucking great. I'd be paying, pennies on the dollar. Oh, I'd be all set. I'd feel great about his tax plan. It's some of his foreign policy things that I don't necessarily agree with, as well as immigration. Tax-wise, I wouldn't give a fuck. Tax-wise, yeah, give me Trump and everything would be fine. Clinton doesn't want to change things too much. She wants to tax me a little bit more on an already high tax rate, historically high tax rate. Entrepreneurs can't take advantage of loopholes. I'm not sure that many of the mainline candidates have figured this out. But yeah, I think he will win, ultimately. That's about all. Peace out.